I just don't really believe in competition, and I think that there's an audience for all of us. There's space out there for all of us. If you want it, go get it. Like, there's nothing holding you back but yourself.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the show. This is the What You Don't Hear podcast. This is a life podcast. It's a story podcast. It's a bit of an open journal dive into people's lives as I sit and I uncover the real story behind my guest's journey, finding out what makes them who they are, digging into the parts of their story that we otherwise wouldn't normally get to hear about. Now, who am I? I am your host. My name is Ross Tyson. I'm a freelancer of all kinds. I'm a creative director. I've been known to dabble a bit as a filmmaker, and I'm also quietly trying to build a media empire. But of course, as you can tell in this case, I'm a podcaster because in general, I'm just somebody who really enjoys talking to people. So before I reveal and get into who I'm talking to this week, as always with these intros as of late, before we get to the conversation, I've got some cool stuff to tell you about first because I don't keep this show afloat totally on my own at the moment. While it is a one-man program all in all, I've got some wonderful sponsors who are helping me out a ton, and I'm going to tell you about them right now. So first, this episode is brought to you in part by Makers Social. That is a place that is located right here in the Franklinton Arts District where I happen to make this podcast. So, what is it? Well, Makers Social is a DIY project bar where you can get your hands messy with some fun projects like woodworking, jewelry making, painting, crafting of all kinds, or even making your own real leather wallets. And they also host private events such as team building, corporate events, and birthdays. Now, what's more interesting is they also have a full bar loaded with cocktails, local beers, and a very rare bourbon list for you bourbon collectors out there. So what's more fun than getting your craft on with some friends while maybe getting your drink on as well for a night out? So if you do want to do that, you can make a reservation on their website. And if you do, right now you can type in the code WYDH into the notes section when you make your reservation to get $10 off your project's booking. So head over to makerscolumbus.com if you want to go check it out. And if you want to book a reservation, enter WYDH into the notes of your checkout for $10 off and just support some fun local things that are going down here in Franklinton. So, this episode is also brought to you in part by PromoWest Productions. You know the drill by now. I've got some more cool shows that you can go check out. So, if you are interested in catching a live show, you can check out one of these upcoming concerts that's going down at Kemba Live, brought to you, of course, by PromoWest. On Friday, September 9th, they've got Jimmy Eat World. Then Death Cab for Cutie rolls into town on September 26th. Then Big Wild on September 28th. And rounding us out for this list of shows, Palais Royale on September 29th. Now, if you want to purchase tickets, you can, of course, jump to axs.com. Or for more info on these shows or any other upcoming shows in general, you can find all that info at promowestlive.com. So, big thanks to the sponsors for hopping on the show and supporting as always, but let's get to this week's conversation. So this week, I have a wonderful guest as I sit down with Jessica Capusta, aka Jessica Cabbage, and yes, technically, that is her real name, and we actually find that out in this episode. But honestly, I have such an awesome conversation this week that honestly just reminds me that I'm not alone nor crazy for being a person who enjoys doing pretty much anything that comes to mind and sounds interesting to me. Jessica talks a lot about trying pretty much everything that seems interesting to her. A lot of that included food styling, blogging, content creation for different food brands and companies, starting her own catering company, and even starting her own sauce company. Honestly, so many cool things, but I think maybe the biggest takeaway for this one is that she shares like what's powerful about letting ourselves quit the things that are no longer interesting or serve us in a positive way. Now, I know that might sound a little bit, mystic or mysterious, or maybe sounds negative, I don't know, but she truly does explain it in a powerful way, and something that I hugely agree with, that there is power in just letting ourselves quit and not seeing things like that, just straight up as a failure. So I would just let her tell you all of that stuff. So let's just dive in. There's a lot of good stuff in this one. So let's get to it. Here is episode 65 of What You Don't Hear and my conversation with Jessica Capusta. We should be set and ready to go. I love that this is the biggest
is my
part
day,
of your day.
yeah.
This is your day, being
Yeah.
on this. Well, hopefully this ends up being a good day for you.
Yeah, no, I think it will be.
And at the end of it, you're not like, that is what I did with my day? I was on this dude's podcast, and I guess what a bad day I had today.
I feel like that already sounds like it's going to be a good day, though. Like, that sounds cool already, so,
Yeah, good, okay.
Like,
I'm glad that's the feeling coming into this. Like, yeah, I get to do a podcast today, not like I
Right.
have to do a podcast today. We got flat tires out of the way, no more of that.
Yes.
We are here, we are sitting down, and we are ready to make this happen. So, Jessica, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad
excited.
that we've finally been able to align schedules and sit down and make this happen.
Yes.
Now, right off the bat, I would love to know just what all you do because, full disclosure, a lot of the times when I have people on this show that I don't already know, I don't really do like a deep investigation into them because I like finding things out real time, right? So now, the biggest thing, like I know you're a food stylist.
Yes. Yeah.
And I also thought your name genuinely was Jessica Cabbage.
So it pretty much is.
Okay.
Yeah. So my last name is Kapusta, which means cabbage in Polish. And a lot of other like Slavic languages. So yeah. So I just figured it was easier to put Jessica Cabbage.
That's actually okay. See,
translate it.
I felt dumb because like
Oh, no.
when I initially back when I had added you to like the guest list of like I'd like to
Yeah.
reach out to her at some point, I just wrote you down as Jessica Cabbage, and then when I later had like looked at your profile, like I think when we were like DMing about scheduling this and everything, I was like, her name isn't Cabbage. Turns out it actually is.
It is.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so again, from the main thing that I know that you do is food stylist.
Yeah.
Is there more to that? Like, what all does that entail, really?
Yeah, so I did do some food styling, but mainly content creation. So writing recipes, writing blogs, and then I would take pictures of the recipes and kind of, make them look pretty, which is the food styling component. And then I've done some food styling for some other brands, but mainly just producing recipes and content for natural food brands was a lot of what I did for a very, very long time. So yeah, that's been a lot of things in the food space. I've branched off into a couple of other different things, but I'd say, kind of my core competencies are food styling and content creation.
Okay, so is all that is that like your own thing? Like, are you freelance in that and just kind of do that for everyone, or is it like?
Yeah, so I got really lucky because I started kind of doing that at a time when it wasn't that big. And so I got really cool opportunities to do that for a lot of brands. And it wasn't, also got pretty good at doing it for brands where I didn't have to use my own social media to market it. So that was very nice. So I just got to create content for them and make sure it fit their vision, and I didn't have to try to then apply it to my own thing that I was doing, which allowed me to work with several different brands at a time because there's no competing, ad space on my feed for them.
Right.
So yeah, it ended up being this kind of like very fun, cool thing. And yeah, it was just all me reaching out. I was very lucky to make some friends early on too, who ended up doing marketing for several different brands and kind of bringing me along with them. So yeah, for a long time, that was what I did, all day long. So.
And so are you saying has that changed recently?
Yeah. So I started my own catering company.
Oh, sick. Okay.
Yeah, I can't have gluten. I have celiac, and my husband can't have dairy. And often when we would try to cater for parties and things, it was the most difficult thing in the world to just make sure we had, one safe option. So I, started this catering company to be there for people who had all kinds of different allergies. So I tried to make it as allergen friendly as I possibly could. And that was, going pretty well, actually. I ended up getting a lot of corporate gigs because I think it's really hard in a workplace setting. to find, not everybody's eating the same diets. I think when you have a group of friends, you'll have more people alike. But when you're in an office, people tend to have, this person is diabetic, or this person doesn't eat dairy, or this person's allergic to nuts. So like, what do you do?
A lot of different lifestyles.
Yeah,
coming together.
right. Because it's an interesting intersection, right, of people. So I ended up doing a lot of corporate catering. And then I went to take a class with the Women's Small Business Accelerator and decided to start a sauce business. So when I was catering, the thing that people mentioned the most was that the sauces were really good. And then they were like, oh, but I can't have this one because it has this in it. And I was like, oh, no, it doesn't. Don't worry about it. That's not in there. These are like, it's like mostly hemp seeds. And like people were like shocked. And so, people kept saying you should bottle it. And so I was like, okay, I'll bottle it. So I kind of went on a journey with that while I was still doing the catering and doing the sauces. And then the pandemic was a big halt. So I kept pushing through the first year of the pandemic, and then kind of have let myself for the past year just take like a semi-retirement. It just got to a point where it really was going to be, not feasible to continue on. We put a lot of resources into it. By we, I mean me and my husband, like personal resources, and it was just getting overly stressful. And so, I decided about a year ago that I was just going to give myself time to just be. So that's what I've been doing for the past year. I've had a couple of projects here and there. And I'm kind of trying to figure out what direction I want to go in and where I want to be.
Yeah. So okay. So we're having this conversation at a very interesting point in time.
Yeah.
Which is cool. It's cool hearing you say that, because I don't know if like that portion of like a creative or entrepreneur or whatever you want to label it as conversation, like I don't know if that is shared enough of like, hey, slow down sometimes. Like it's okay to like kind of set something aside to figure out what exactly you want to do. Because I feel like when a lot of people get into that mode, they get into the hustle and grind mode of like, I have to accomplish this, which is a great thing, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, we all want to accomplish our fun goals that we want.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's so easy to get caught in that system and that cycle of just like, if I stop, I'm a failure, right? Like,
right. Oh, 100%. And also to like, to be aware of when you've really just hit a wall, when it's really, and it's not a wall you're breaking through, like this is a brick wall and you can keep slamming yourself against it and keep punishing yourself for, what you're perceiving as failing or not being enough. Or you can take a step back and really just evaluate. Those are hard habits to break when you get to a point where you're, in it every day, 24/7, answering emails, running around like crazy, doing demos and all this stuff. And you kind of get like a high from it. It gets very addictive. And I mean, the second I stopped working originally, I make it sound so like nice and serene now. But I came up with like 8 other business ideas. I was like, okay, here's all the other things I could be doing. And I was like writing out business plans and I was getting all this stuff ready. And then, it was honestly my husband who was like, why don't you just sit down? Why don't you just not do, 8 jobs at once and just take some time off? And I was like, well, I didn't want to be perceived as being, lazy or having given up too, I think was part of it. But it took about a month or 2 and then I kind of came down from all of it and was like, oh no, I need time, because I've literally just rushed and jumped from once I got good at one thing or one thing was successful, then I pushed for the next thing. And that's kind of been lifelong. So this is probably the first time ever that I have like consciously tried not to do excessive. I still do things. It's hard for me not to be doing anything at all.
Of course,
But to have this excessive amount of like work and busyness all of the time. So it's been interesting.
That's literally, you honestly just answered the question I was about to ask you, was like, is this kind of the first time you've slowed yourself down and really made that conscious effort to be like, let's not.
Yeah, I mean, because I was a gifted kid, and then, I went on to college and I was really good at math and science. And so they push you to do all these things. And then I was going to go to medical school and then I didn't. So then I was like, well, so now I need to work and go and get a graduate degree in something else so it's been a lifetime of me being like, yes, and, but in kind of you just don't even notice. I would not notice how many things I was doing at a time. And then step back and look at, in this short amount of life that I've lived, that I've done all of these wild things. People are always like, you've done a lot of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I know, because I didn't used to sleep or think about other things.
Right, yeah, I didn't balance it out with anything else.
No, I didn't have hobbies. I had jobs.
That is huge. That is something that I had to hit a wall in the last couple of years and have that wake up call of sitting and realizing, oh, wait, like every single hobby or interest that I pick up, I turn into a business motivated thing.
Yeah.
Which part of that's not the worst thing, but it's also not great.
Right.
Because then you sit and it's everything I touch turns into this ulterior motive. I have to do this and I have to do that and blah, blah, blah. And you sit and you just have that driving force at the back of your head all the time of you're not doing well enough with this thing. And it's maybe I just want to sit and play a video game. I don't need to become a streamer.
Right.
I'm bad about that. I've gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
But I still will always, now I'm good at catching myself.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you and I are very, very similar in that way of you have an idea, it sparks something, you're I see how this is possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why would I deny myself the ability to give it a shot and try it? Which again, isn't totally the worst thing to have, right?
Right.
But that ability to catch yourself at first and slow yourself down so you're not just going 0 to 100 immediately.
Yeah.
That's what I've been doing a lot of work on. Is okay, this does sound like a fun idea. Maybe you would enjoy doing it, and you can see how logically and practically it could work. But do you need to, or when maybe? Maybe it's not right now. Not everything has to be tomorrow. Do you feel like that's kind of been the cycle that you've went through now, having this realization where you're taking your first break ever?
Yeah, definitely. That's the thing. Because and society rewards you, right, for doing all of those things. And particularly if you can do them at a high level, that the reward you get for that is intense.
It's hard when you know your ability to do something and you know you can accomplish it.
Oh, yeah. It's terrible. And it's because it's this and it's a lot of ego and a lot of these things that we just you don't see it as that when I'm being creative and whatever. But then also you're ripping the emotion from that thing that you're doing because you had to now make it successful, which means you have to give it structure and systems and you've taken the love and the passion and all of that out of this thing. And so it's hard then when you look back at it. So I don't cook as much now as I did before. And a lot of people took it as this, were sad for me. And I get it, but I think for me it was also just, I had taken the soul out of doing that and made it very procedural. And so, at some point I probably will reconnect with it, but I think it's part of the whole thing of, I don't necessarily feel sad about not being connected to it right now because it represents something different than it used to. I think when it was my passion to be in the kitchen every day, it was different than when it became, okay, well, I need to make these recipes by this time so I can film it in this light, and, I have to write the blog post after that, so I'll make sure I need this much cleanup time. It changes the dynamic of those things and can really rob you of the actual passion and the actual joy you had when you started that thing. So
that is the exact process that I feel like I've been in.
Yeah.
In almost different waves with different things over the last I would say 2 years probably. And the biggest thing what we were talking about a little bit before we started recording was a lot of the work that I've done over the last handful of years has been in the video world. I direct a lot of videos. That has been that challenge that I've been in, is because it starts out as something fun.
Right.
Then it turns into a job, which is the ultimate win, right? It's now I'm getting to do the thing that I love, but then it becomes just, I love the way you explain it. It's it becomes very procedural. Yeah. It becomes very you do this and you do that and hopefully you get clients and blah, blah, blah. And for me, that's been the big identifier lately, is being man, I'm not totally loving this anymore, but I'm working on finding different aspects of okay, what is it that you do like about it? Right. And that doesn't mean you have to completely get rid of one or the other. It's just how do you make sure you're balancing out with more of the things that you do like.
Yeah.
So for me, that's been, filming a lot more of my own ideas and my own projects, but also even in a way identifying that maybe video itself isn't the end-all be-all thing that I had perceived it as for the last handful of years, right? Because when you accomplish that goal, you're like, oh, this is my thing.
Right.
And for me, I think I've been identifying, like, I don't think video is my thing. I think it's an extension of the thing.
Yeah.
Right? The extension of a tool in which I use to create. It's not, oh, if you're not a video director, you're not what you're supposed to be.
Right.
I've been able to identify that, like, no, my core, these are the things I like to do, and that just so happens to fit into that element.
Right.
And it's very easy to put all the weight on that one thing or on that label and be like, well, yeah, I do all these things, but this must be the main thing that I'm supposed to do. And then it's easy to trap ourselves in that and be like, this 100%. Is what I am.
Yeah, right, because that's how we introduce ourselves, right? It's been an interesting kind of thing because we've met a lot of new people. I've met a lot of new people lately. And, as things are opening back up and going places. And so it's interesting to introduce myself as somebody who doesn't work because everyone introduces themselves as their occupation first. I am this thing. I am a doctor. I am a director. I am, and so it's been really interesting because I've had to be like, I am Jessica. And which has led to, a whole bunch of exploring who you are as a person too, which is an interesting moment in time.
Right. So looking into that, digging in a little bit, what was kind of that point that you hit where you were like, wait a second, do I not enjoy the thing that I thought I did about that? Was it just that overwhelming feeling of I'm just doing too much? Or what was that kind of wake up moment of wait a second, okay.
Yeah, I think it was when I realized that I was doing a break-even analysis actually, and it just kept moving further and further away from ever being reasonable. And then I realized that how much stress am I willing to tolerate to get to a point where this becomes, viable? How much am I really willing to put myself through? Because it's been this stressful, and I was looking for this break. I was looking for a point where it became less all-consuming. And then to just watch it as I'm sitting there running numbers and just watching it move further and further away, which is this moment of it's outrunning you. You could try to catch it all you want, and you can put as much blood, sweat, and tears, but you have up until this point. So can you double your efforts to make that not run away from you so fast? Or is it just kind of at this point a good time to call it? Before you end up, in a really bad place, either, mentally or, financially, physically, whatever it may be. So yeah, it just was this sense of overwhelm and just knowing that I couldn't double my efforts because I was at max output. And so therefore that line, that break even, which was just the thing that I happened to be doing at the time, that created this great visualization, because as you're making the graph, it's just moving further and further out. And I was like, oh gosh, 1 year, 2 years, okay, all right, sure. 8 years, wow. I could have gotten 2 degrees in that amount of time. That's far. Okay. And then it just kept going, and it was this great visualization of and how much more effort does it take to shrink that? And am I willing to do that? And I think I just got to the point of, I don't think it's possible for me to increase my output that way. So
on the note of having all these things on your plate, no pun intended, right? I started this by being hey, I just know you via Instagram as the food stylist. And then you instantly listed a catering business and sauce making and blogging and all these other things. Take me back, where does even the interest in the food industry even begin?
So my parents were not cooks, and they kind of weren't great kid people either. But they they did do some awesome things. But so they kind of just let me do whatever I wanted in the kitchen. They were just like, oh yeah, of course. Like, yeah, try that. Sure, make that. Whatever. It's okay. Like, and so they gave me this good amount of experimentation. And then as I got older, I wanted to just have like decent food. And I was health conscious because I was a teenage girl and I danced and all that good stuff. And so I always wanted it to be a little bit healthier. I also knew something about food was making me sick and wasn't sure at the time. So I kind of took over cooking. And then I think because they allowed me to experiment so much, I was actually pretty proficient when I started kind of cooking for myself. And so I got to have fun. I mean, I think really like them giving me that space. And then me kind of taking over cooking duties just because I wanted to. But, you know, my dad would buy whatever it was that I said I needed for whatever recipe. So, like, I always had the things. And so I got to create, like, really cool meals all the time. And it's that kind of instantaneous reward of, like, making something with your hands that then is beautiful and delicious.
Yeah.
So, you know, it all started there, and I always cooked, and I cooked for my friends all the time. And then kind of when I got met with the harsh realities of a big girl job, I knew America wasn't for me, that the structure wasn't for me. And especially I'm really good at math and science, and so everybody wants you to do that math and science thing, but I'm also a creative person, and there's not a lot of room for creativity in those fields, which is kind of a big reason that I knew that wasn't for me. So I just started posting on my Instagram and, you know, trying to figure out how to take decent pictures, and because I was like, you know, I'd love it if this became something. So that's kind of where it all started a very long time ago, like 10 years ago now.
Well, that's what I was going to ask is like
Yeah.
how much of this coincided with kind of like the rise of social media of
Yeah.
like, because again, finding yourself as a blogger or a stylist that is, you know, as you mentioned earlier, taking photos of the dishes and, you know, all this
Yeah.
sort of stuff, like that is very internet centric. That's
Yeah.
very like social media share, you know, content, all that sort of stuff. So is that kind of like, as you were figuring out like, okay, yeah, I like this food thing, I really like to make my own things and all this sort of stuff, it just so happened it's like, oh, also here's Instagram and here's this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, when I started that, like the other big food stylists, bloggers, whatever, maybe had 10,000 followers. Like it wasn't what it is now.
Yeah, okay.
And so I think that it was not that intimidating for me entering that space because there weren't that many people doing it. It wasn't like, you know, I also just think like go and do the thing. If you have passion and you love it, you'll find your niche. But yeah, it was kind of just everybody was starting out. And so you would tag people and stuff and they would respond and they would repost your things. And so it became kind of, and that's how I got actually picked up by some of the brands that I worked with. So yeah, it was this, Instagram was not that old. I couldn't have been. Because I literally went from posting pictures of my dog to then my food.
Yeah.
So like it couldn't have been, you know, that far along yet. And I think I had carried over a bunch of friends from Facebook. So I already had like a pretty good start on Instagram. So it was just interesting how they both coincided. And I think it was a little bit of luck of good timing. You know, just being in the right place at the right time.
Do you feel like if you were trying to start that stuff today, do you think you'd feel differently about like diving into it now that it is like everyone's a blogger of some sort?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like you'd feel differently, or you'd be like, nah, like once you identify that thing you want to do, like you can figure it out?
Yeah, I'm the kind of person who I just don't really believe in competition, and I think that there's an audience for all of us. There's space out there for all of us. If you want it, go get it. Like there's nothing holding you back but yourself. So I probably would have, if it were today, tried to do the same exact thing. You know, I don't know if I would have been successful in the same ways, but it would have been a different journey. Like the whole landscape's different, and I think that would have been cool. But yeah, I think I have a very abundance mindset, apparently. That's what I've been told. But so like, I just am like, yeah, go for it. I think we should all go for it.
Yeah.
There's an audience for all of us.
I agree. I definitely agree. Now, where, like, I want to dive back even further.
Okay.
Where does even all of that, like, outlook on things come from? And I mean, it sounds like, whether, you know, I'm sure at some point on your journey, you could identify it and label it as like, oh yeah, entrepreneur stuff, right?
Yeah.
But like, it sounds like, just to kind of label as a general thing, like, it sounds like you have a very entrepreneur type mind. It's that creative mind of like, hey, that's possible. Why wouldn't I try it? And this is also possible. So why not give it a shot? Like, where does that come from? Like, what was growing up like? Was it an environment that was very much like, try everything you want, or was it the opposite, so you got to do that later? Like, take me back into that. Like, where does that come from?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's my dad. My dad was always, you know, he's like, the world is full of possibilities and you are extraordinary. And he said it to everyone that he ever interacted with. But you know, when you hear that a lot, that, you know, my dad's like, you're only limited by the possibilities that you can imagine. So he's like, if you want it, go do it. I mean, there's definitely, and maybe where some of the drive comes, some pressure to be very good at that thing if you chose to do it. Like, don't muck about. But it is out there for you and available, and if you want it, go get it. So, you know, my dad always said, you be whatever you want to be, do whatever you want to do. He's like, you can make money doing anything, so figure it out. But it's like, you're going to have to be good. He's like, and if you pick certain things, you're going to have to be tough. So, but go and do it. It's like, it's out there. So
Yeah.
I think I just always was like, you know, people will tell you no, but I was like, well, my dad said yes.
Yeah, which is
like,
awesome,
and he said that
though.
my whole life, so I like have to believe him. I don't know.
No, but that's so cool though. Like, what awesome stuff
Yeah.
for dad to say and sit and be like, yeah, the world is full of possibilities.
Yeah.
You know, because it's very easy for, you know, a lot of people while they're growing up. I mean, a lot of the times we're told like, make sure you go to school and then go to college and get that degree for the job and then go get that job.
Right.
And then maybe have some fun on the weekend if you want to do something you want to do.
Right.
So like, it's awesome that it was just
Yeah.
like, hey, yeah, do well at the thing
Yeah.
that you choose
Yeah.
to do. I'm sure they
Yeah.
weren't like, don't have a job or anything.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't that. But
No.
yeah, it was very much like, hey, like,
Yeah, anything can be a job. I mean, it's like you can make anything a job. So, you know, but you have to be good, especially if you're gonna pick something creative. You're gonna have to be good at that thing. So, yeah, but it left like pretty much everything open to us. I mean, he would have loved for us to be doctors and lawyers and things, but
right.
you know, but he always thought, he's like, you know, you can do whatever. And he also always pushed me to do different things, like especially different things for a woman and especially different things for a Black woman. So at the time, annoying a bit, but I think by him pushing me to do different things, I saw that different things were possible. Because I golfed and I played the saxophone and I did a bunch of things that I was on academic challenge, just things that like places where he saw people who looked like me underrepresented. He felt like it was a good place to kind of push me, because he was like, if you do well at it, then, you know, I mean, I think he was literally trying to prove the point that you can do well at these things, even if they aren't in your realm of thinking or, you know, in your belief system that you have built up. So I do think that, yeah, when I was a kid, it was very annoying. I was like, none of my friends are doing this. Like, all my friends were playing the violin. I want to play the violin. And my dad's like, no, you try the saxophone. And I was like, ugh. And then I did it and was good at it. And then, you know, then it's like, oh, no, I really can do all of these things. Like, there is no limit on what I'm capable of doing, which I think was an amazing lesson and definitely something I've taken with me into adulthood.
which is so cool because like I always get so excited when I hear anyone explain the idea of like, yeah, just try whatever you want to try.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
cliche, like, as long as you're not harming someone else, just do the thing.
Right.
Just try it.
Yeah.
Like, because that I feel like for as long as I can remember, at least once I was like, entering into the adult world and making, real decisions, like that's always been how I've operated.
Yeah.
And I think it's fun to operate that way.
Yeah.
Again, like we started this conversation with saying, like, it can get stressful and it brings a lot of battles that maybe, somebody else isn't dealing with or something, right? But like that ability to just have that open mind of like, all right, cool, let's see what this is like. Let's see what that is like. Again, there's a good and a bad,
100%,
with all of that, because it can be, a dangerous game to enter into of like, oh, well, I want to try this and I want to try that. Like, again, just like I said earlier, like I've been trying to kind of catch myself because I'm that person who like, you even being like, yeah, it was, I made my own sauce. In my mind, I'm like, that'd be fun to make your own sauce. I wonder, how did you do that? And I want to sit and be like, what was your process? Like, because like I almost have this addiction just to like doing things just to say that I did it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not always about like, I want to have the next awesome sauce company.
Right.
It's more so just about like, I don't know, I like the idea of a bucket list a lot.
Yeah.
And not like go skydiving,
Right,
but like
right.
really do something, like, and so like, I'm always like, why couldn't I just add that to my list and find the right person who's like, yeah, I'll help you make a sauce as a one-off for the sauce brand that I have or something. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is, like, sure, let's give it a shot. Like, I love that. And that might not always be the most logical way of thinking because there's money and time and all these other things that go into stuff. And so I understand why things have to kind of either take that business motive or just a hobby. But I am like, let's just all have all the hobbies. Like,
well, it's fun.
Let's just do all the things all the time and don't deny yourself the fun of giving something a shot. And, something I've said on the show a billion times, but I'm always going to say, because it always comes up in conversations like this, is like, I'm a big proponent of just trying something.
Yeah.
And it also being okay if you quote unquote fail or don't like it or something like that. It's fine because like the win to me is the fact you gave it a shot.
Yeah.
And then I think there's still value in finding out that like, oh, that thing I thought I wanted, I didn't actually want. And now I know.
Yeah.
I think there's like giving yourself that release or releasing the pressure of giving yourself the answer.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people don't do that as often maybe as we should. I don't know if that's...
I would agree with that. I mean, I think you see that a lot where people have kind of tied their whole being to what it is they're doing, and in deep way, like it's very entrenched in their identity, and so it's difficult to let go of, and it's hard not to do. I mean, you're living your passion, right? That's your passion, so that's a deeply entrenched thing. So giving that up is not so easy. I will say that I think the other good thing that my dad did was let me quit. So if it got to a point where I recognized like this is not like the saxophone. Really, it came to I thought about wearing the band uniforms, and they looked very hot, and I don't do hot very well. And so I was like, Dad, and he was like, it's okay. He's like, you played it. I played it from 3rd grade till 8th grade or whatever, and it's like, and then I called it quits, but I had given it the try, and I had given it a full effort, and so, I think that I always do have that in the back of my mind, and it's kind of what's allowed me to evolve and to move forward and shapeshift what I'm doing, and sometimes allowed me to be more successful in things that I'm doing, is that I am okay to quit. I'm okay to call it quits because I recognize that it's just not going to work. And I gave it the try. I put the effort in. I did all the things. I didn't, I feel like it's harder if you didn't feel like you gave your full self to something, but I try with everything I do to give it 100%. And then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And now it's time to go find the next thing to do or to focus on, or, reevaluate old things that maybe I need to put energy into. So
I love, and might be silly to say, but like, I love the idea of letting yourself quit.
Yeah.
Like
it's hard.
It's kind of like, what we were just talking about, but like even just saying it that way, it's like, like give yourself the freedom that if you're tired of something or done with something or you got fulfilled,
right,
you don't have to live the rest of your life attached to that one thing. Like, I feel like letting yourself quit is a super powerful thing. Yeah. It's very easy to just avoid at all costs.
Oh, right? Because I think we assign so much meaning to quitting. But did you, like, I love, like, when people leave the corporate world, did you assign that much meaning to quitting that job? I feel like they didn't quite as much, right? But when we are working for ourselves, we assign so much more meaning to quitting. Like, it's, you know, and I get it because I've been there and it does feel hard and it is. But, like, yeah, I had to quit. It was not working. And so I had to create the separation for myself.
Do you think that just like that blockade for everybody comes from just the blatant, like, well, it's listed as if quitting is failing, and it's hard to, you know, the cliche quote of like failing is an opportunity to learn something new, like fail up, right? Like failing can be a good thing. All those cliches, like, do you think it comes from that we look at failing as the opposite? Failing is just, you know what I mean? Like that's the final thing. I failed. That's it. I quit. I'm a failure.
Right. Because I think it's, you know, a limiting belief, a belief that there aren't other possibilities for you out there. If this one thing didn't work, you know, it's easy to kind of spiral about what that means about you as a person and what that means about your future and rebounding from that thing. I think that people really do. Failure is this terrible thing, and we can't admit to it, and we can't, you know, look at it, because if we do, it's just a scary big pit and we can never get out of it. But you know, I've quit things that I don't think anyone would have said I was failing at. So I think that there's time to reframe what it looks like. I mean, if with my sauce business, it got to a point where it was like, okay, like, you can keep going in this way. And it wasn't failing at that time. There was nothing to be failing. And I quit because I realized that it wasn't going to be fulfilling for me any longer. So I think how we reframe and when we decide to make that break is so huge. In our language about ourselves and in our language about what we're doing there. Because if it's failing and then you feel like you have to quit because it can no longer move forward, that's a terrible feeling.
Right.
You know, except for instead of acknowledging, you know, either it's too much energy or it's too much time or it's not where I need to focus right now. I think there's a lot of other possibilities to explore instead of it just being a failure.
I just feel like so much of how I look at that, I feel like is like almost like, okay, it's time for something new.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't mean that like this thing is dying or this is, you know, whatever. Even if you are separating yourself from something, like you don't have to carry those things with you all the time. And like I'm also a subscriber to like the idea that, and at least I say this because I've seen this in myself and I've allowed myself to live this way.
Yeah.
I also feel like, you know, as humans, yes, it goes without saying, we're always growing and evolving and, you know, it should be at least, right? Not just in age, but I'm talking in life experience. But like, I also think like we don't identify enough that we go through phases.
Yeah.
Like we can change the things that we want to do. Right. And obviously it probably comes from like an old, you know, the old system that's in place of like we were talking about earlier, like you go to school, you get the degree, you get the job, you enter the workforce, and maybe on the weekends you're allowed to have some fun. And it's like, no. And I do, you know, yes, that's changing for a lot of people now, right? Especially with the advent of social media and all this sort of stuff. Yes, everyone is, or a lot of people at least are starting to wake up to the idea that like there are kind of infinite possibilities now. But I still think that even when we look at those things, we also don't remember and identify, like, it's not just about finding something new to attach yourself to. It's not even the attachment piece. It's learning that, like, maybe for the next year of my life, I really like this thing.
Yeah.
And then letting yourself experience that thing and like that thing. And then if you get the fulfillment of it, letting yourself quit and move on to the next thing and not sitting and being like, I can't believe I just spent an entire year of my life doing this. I failed.
Yeah, right. Well, I had this moment where we were at one of my husband's cousin's weddings, and everyone was dancing, and his aunt comes up to me, and she goes, you know what? She's like, I just think you're so brave, and I admire so much about how when a situation doesn't suit you anymore, you're willing to move on and do something else. And it was so funny because it was just at this moment where I had just decided to stop doing all this and was beyond all of my wisdom right now, a year later, definitely beating myself up over not having pushed harder or something, or, why can't I just stick to the one thing or whatever? And then to have, and she's been CFO of companies and things like that. So to have her come over and say that to me, it was like this interesting juxtaposition of this person that we would all say is very successful and me who we would say maybe isn't as successful, well, or not successful. And having this conversation where she was like, I just admire the fact that you're able to move on to something new. And so for the past year, I've kind of, since that conversation, been trying to reframe that as a strength of mine, as an ability to recognize that this isn't working, or I've gotten enough from it, or, it's time for me to do this new thing. Because, we grow and change. I've lived now all over the state of Ohio. I'm from Cleveland. We lived in Cincinnati for a few years. Now I'm here in Columbus. But so, I've also been totally different ages in all of those places. And so why would I be doing the same things from place to place? I love that I've kind of given myself that openness to shift into who I am and not just what I do in each of these phases of my life.
It might be a weird question, but do you feel like you find yourself in that position where people are often saying things like that to you? Like not even so much in the context of like, oh my God, you're so brave, but like, do you find yourself as like that maybe advice person of like, Jessica, you do so many things. How can I do so many things? Like,
yeah, I do think that happens a lot, which is for me a little bit, I get a little bit thrown off because I'm like, I don't know if I give the best advice. Like, I'm not sure if you want to follow in my footsteps because it's been chaotic, and until very recently, pretty high stress. So I'm not sure if this is really, the path that you want to go down, but sure, if you want to talk, I love talking, obviously. So
I ask that because I feel very similar in that sense.
Yeah.
I find myself having those conversations.
Yeah.
And I also know that I'm looking at it from that perspective of like, dude, you don't know how hard of a day I just had yesterday.
Yeah.
But I think like the biggest thing, and I'm telling myself this out loud as I'm identifying it in you, is like, sometimes I don't even know if it's about like the direct advice or like, give me a plan that I can follow.
Yeah.
It's more so that I think like, people are interested in other people's perspectives.
Yeah.
And like, because I do that a lot with other people around me where it's like, I have an idea and I've got a pretty loose plan on how to accomplish that idea.
Yeah.
So I've already got all my stuff in a row.
Yeah.
But I still love running the idea by someone else.
Yeah.
Because I want their perspective. Because their perspective might bring a different viewpoint that I hadn't thought about.
Right.
It might bring one extra step to that plan that I already had in place,
Yeah.
or one extra question that I hadn't asked myself of like, oh yeah, when you put it that way, because I think there's so much power in remembering that like, yeah, we don't all have to do things the exact same
Yeah.
way. And just because, if I wanted to start a sauce company
Yeah.
and I asked you how you did yours, it doesn't mean that just because I take your process, it doesn't mean that I'll be even able to accomplish it
Yeah.
in the same way.
Right.
Just even if I took your step-by-step thing, there's still a lot that I individually have to do with that.
Yeah.
And like, so I think like a lot of the times, like it is that perspective piece of like, yeah, but I just kind of want to know your thoughts on this, right?
No, that's probably, that's actually a great way. I think I just get caught in my head a little bit about it, but that's a beautiful way to look at it because, it's been I have a lot of perspective. I've seen a lot of things from a lot of different angles at this point.
Yeah. Well, that's even, again, that's why I asked that, because it's like, I already in this conversation, I love your perspective on so many things, and I'm like, yeah, like I'm a couple months from now, I'm about to DM you and be like, hey, Jessica, can I get some advice on this? Like, I know we talked about it on the podcast, because I do think you hold a valuable perspective on things, especially, yes, from the standpoint of like, hey, try everything. And it's easy for me to say that because, we've been agreeing on a lot of things, right? So it's very easy for me to be like, I think that way too. You've got great advice. But I feel like I get the sense that you are a good advice giver. I get the sense that you are a good perspective sharer. So that's even why I asked that. Of like, I feel like a lot of people would ask you, hey, what's your thoughts on this? Like,
I love, and I mean, I like to help too. So if I feel like I can help in any way, I love to do that. I'm also, like I'm an open book too. So, I'll share with you the good, the bad, and the ugly of any of it, because I just think, yeah. I think sharing and building, I think when people are asking for advice, and when you're talking about getting that one more thing for whatever plan you have going forward, it's just building community, right? And I think we all strive to do that and look to make connections with people. And it makes other people a part of what we're doing, because I'm sure that this, it can be a little lonely in doing all of these things, because you have this plan and you have these ideas and people can help, but they don't understand the whole picture and they don't understand what goes into it day to day. So it is this kind of unique way of kind of pulling people in and having a little bit more community in a very solitary, field, career
100%
type.
do you ever get somebody, like, if you're having that conversation with them and you are being an open book and you're like, hey, this and that and whatever, do you ever run into anybody who's like, wow, I can't believe you just shared all that advice with me? And I ask that because I do run into that.
Yeah.
And I think it is because there's a lot of, in any industry, a lot of like gatekeeping or secret keeping, where people don't like to be those open books. So it's like, it sometimes almost throws people off when you are so giving of like, hey, ask me any question. I don't know if I have the exact answer, but I have a perspective on it. And sure, we'll talk, or I'll refer you this way or connect you with this other person, building that community.
Yeah.
Sometimes it throws people off, I feel like.
Oh, it definitely does, though. But I think it's because of this idea that there's like a finite amount of possibility for people. And I just think there's, how many million people in this country and how many billions of people around the world? There's opportunity for all of us. So yeah, I will tell you pretty much everything minus I wrote a book with my sauce recipes in it. If it's on Amazon, you can go buy it. You can make the sauces yourself. So, I'm very much I figure there's going to be people who wouldn't want to go and make it themselves, so I can still sell you a bottle of sauce, And so I was just like, I'm fine with putting it out there. I mean, that was one of the ones where my business advisor at the time was like, no, don't put the recipes out. And I was like, I just think there's enough of a market for all of that. There's going to be people who buy cookbooks. There's people who buy jars of sauces, they're and then those people are also not exclusive from each other either. So I'm like,
Right.
I think that there's, I think if you think that there's always going to be some room for you, because we think about people having large followings in social media and they have 2 million followers. What percentage of the population is that? That's no one, if you really think about it,
Right.
That's a lot of people, yes, but it's no one in this perspective of how many people use social media in a day. And so there's still people out there that maybe need exactly what you're selling, or maybe you resonate with on a level because they like your perspective about that thing, or they like how you decided to name your product or whatever. So
Right. And that's, I think that all the time, even with this show.
Yeah.
There's thousands probably at this point, because podcasts are everywhere. There's thousands of shows exactly like this one, right? Where people sit down and have authentic, unedited conversations, right? About life and business and all these sort of things. And it's I can identify this isn't anything new or game changing, but I have also been told by people yeah, but yours is the one I like listening to the most, or whatever that may be.
Yeah.
And it's not because my show's the coolest, but it's it's that perspective piece, right? It's everything that you were just talking about of but maybe the way that these conversations happen are different than the other 1,000 shows. And in the same way that maybe the way that even, if you've been on many podcasts or something, maybe the way that your story is shared on this one or another one, those might differ.
Yeah.
Which means there's something new that you can hear, something new that you can learn or connect with. So that's something I knew even at the beginning of starting this venture, I was like, man, is my, I don't know, will this show or the conversations that I can have, will they really be that different than anything else? And the immediate answer is no. But it's but my want and desire to have these types of conversations and build that community and meet more people. This is a cheat code for meeting people, right? And it's my desire and my enjoyment of doing that is higher than oh, well, yeah, that show already exists, though. It already exists.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, like, this exists, and it's going to attract the people that it's going to attract that resonate with it. And other people who don't listen to it, like, that's okay.
Right,
Like, they'll listen to the other one, or they'll ignore it. You know, like, it's totally fine in the same way that you were saying, like, yeah, like, I can share the sauce recipes because, again, like, straight up, if I had your cookbook and I saw the sauce recipe, I'd be like, yeah, I don't really cook food, so I'm going to order the bottle of sauce. And say, I'm that person, right? Where, like, I would just be like, I just want the sauce. Like, making the sauce sounds fun, but I want the sauce instead. So it's like, that's 100% correct. I feel like in anything across the board is, yes, especially nowadays, there are thousands and thousands of things that are nearly the exact same. They're just named different, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that that thing isn't going to be liked more by somebody else or understood more by someone else. It's the exact same thing. Like, go to the grocery store. How many different hamburger buns are there?
Right, yeah.
But there's probably someone who's like, oh, I would never eat those ones. Those are the ones that I like. It's like,
exactly, yeah.
Everyone has a preference because of the way something makes them feel or whatever it is. Like, so again, it's going back to the point again of like, just try the thing.
Yeah.
Just try the thing and make the thing and do
go
it.
for it, because you never know.
There's some. It's like I don't know what the exact line is, but it's basically like the idea of if you are interested in something, there's somebody else who is as well.
Yeah.
Would it be amazing if in day one of you doing that something, it's 1 million people? Of course.
Right.
But also,
there's
somebody. There's an audience in some way. It's like I literally was having this thought the other day. I was. I don't know if you're a Spotify user or not, but like, you know, Spotify like does like, you know, the new music Friday sort of things and like the release radar that it gives you. Like I was listening to like all this new music that had just came out that day. And it literally like I was sitting and driving and I was like, how many melodies are there really?
Right. Yeah.
And like, you know, like I'm like, how many guitar riffs can there really be?
Right.
Before somebody runs out, like how are they not just copies of everything else? And yes, I know a lot of stuff is influenced by other things, and there's similarities. But I'm just like, how is there this many melodies? There's new songs every day from thousands upon thousands of artists.
Right.
But that goes for anything. I feel like things are going to be similar, but just like you've been saying, there's room for everything.
Right. Yeah, right. It just doesn't mean, and it doesn't mean you're capped at a certain point, and it actually means literally nothing other than go out and do your thing. If you're passionate about it, if it's something that you feel like, you know, you have to really want it, which you know, I'm sure. But like, if you have that, go. Like, it does not matter. Yeah, I mean, like, there's new bloggers that pop up every other day, and so you can't be afraid of that. I love that music one. My husband is a drummer, and he always is like, there's like 16 drum beats that everyone uses. He's like, it's like this. It's like, there's not like a lot of drummers out there doing new things. He's like, you know, so he's always like, Ken, he's always talking about the beats per minute. He's like, popular songs fall within this range. And he like is always telling me these things. He's like, it's this formula.
Of course.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, but I love Lizzo. Like,
Yeah.
So.
I get the beats per minute that her song has is used by this person. But like, I really like her song.
Right, exactly. Yeah, she's the one. I'm gonna buy her album, or I'm gonna download her album. Because do we buy them anymore? Really?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
vinyl collectors.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, so that's it's an excellent analogy for that one. I love that.
Is like the way you just explained that, and I know we keep kind of saying the same things to drive home this point, but like the way that you just explained that of again just like letting yourself try the things like. Is that what you would share with somebody who's kind of really facing those limiting beliefs? Like, what is it that you would tell that person who's sitting and like, you know, Jessica, like, I want to try this, but I see 1,000 versions of it. I don't think mine is that important, and I just don't know how to get started. And that limiting belief factor, 100% is a blockade for them.
Yeah, I mean, I always like, I am not the friend to give you like the advice of stay at your job, you need health insurance. I am the friend that is like, you're really good at this thing and go do that. You love that thing. You don't like doing this other thing, or you haven't found a thing that you like as much as this, so go do it. Like, everything, maybe just an eternal optimist, but it will work out in some way, fashion. I mean, worst case scenario, you realize that is not really what you should spend your time doing. You can always find a job, like just a job. I mean, I feel like if you have that spark and that push to go do something on your own, you are likely to be resourceful enough to then go find a job to get. Yeah. So go ahead and do this thing and give it the try, because if this works out, like, what is the payoff on that is a million times better than anything else you could be doing. So let's just go for it. And I'll be here to cheer on and share and do whatever I can. So, So
let me ask you this. Has there ever been a point in time thus far in your, and I know we kind of started this conversation with this kind of, not so much breaking point, 'cause that sounds way more dramatic, but like that sort of like, okay, the identifier that I need to slow down a little bit. Like outside of that, has there ever been a point in time where this belief has waned at all, where you're like, maybe I shouldn't give this a shot? Like, or especially with the pressures of, like, I always ask this, of like that time frame of like high school to potential college and adult world, and you're really on your own. Like, even during that time frame, was it just like, I'm gonna keep doing this thing, or was there ever that like, I don't know, maybe I should grab that safety net of a career, quote unquote, and then try these things for fun?
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely how I started out. Was I had decided that I wasn't very good at like the social sciences. So I decided I wouldn't be very good at like business or like political science or things like that. And so I just decided being an entrepreneur, that was for like people who were very good at talking to people. I had convinced myself I am very good at talking at people, but I had convinced myself that I was not very good at talking to people, and I had convinced myself that you needed to be kind of this very charismatic, very gregarious person to be able to build anything, and so I would probably be best suited to use other skills I had to make money, because that's kind of what you're coached as when you enter college. I mean, they'll coach you into whatever kind of, but they're coaching, they want you to make money as much as, anybody else does, because they'd love for you to give back and all of those things. Right. So, they'd like to, if you scored really well on certain tests, they're like, yeah, no, you should be in our science program and things. And so you kind of get pushed that way. And I had convinced myself that for a long time. And then I got married, moved to Cincinnati, was in a place where I didn't really know anyone, and decided that, you know what, like, who cares? Honestly, because being safe kind of started feeling a little unsettling, because I felt like I wasn't really expressing who I was. And I think that that's been the most important thing for me along this entire path that I've got on, is that I really just need to be authentic as who I am and what I'm doing and where I'm at in life, and kind of pigeonholing yourself doesn't allow you to do that. So there was this moment where it was all new people, no one had any past knowledge of me, so it was kind of like, all right, who cares? Just go for it. No one knows you. There's no judgment. There's no of these your old beliefs aren't there hanging around anymore. So I think that physical separation for me is kind of what caused the mind shift change, the mindset shift. But yeah, so I definitely did start out very much thinking that I had to go along a traditional path. But mostly because I just think I didn't think I had the skills to go for whatever it was.
Right. It was more so that idea that I think we all do at different points in time. Yeah. It's like, even if you have that drive and that core belief of like, no, these are things I want to do or can do, you try to suppress that because it in a lot of ways feels like you're supposed to.
Right,
Kinda, right?
Well, and then, yeah, and you also get the line of like, well, go and be successful in this thing, and then you can do this other thing, which was kind of, so prior to us moving to Cincinnati, my husband had a very difficult time finding a job. And he had just graduated with a JD and an MBA. So you would think, very poised to get some great job, right? And he had a very hard time. And so it was kind of a wake-up call to me that, like, you can do all of the right things, all of the things you're supposed to do, and you can follow this path so that you can then, make a good income, and then you can save your money, and then you can do your passion project. And I was like, why wait? Like, he did all those things and it did not work out that way. And so I'm not going to then do that. And then we were in this new environment and I was like, well, all right, we're somewhere new. I just watched like a really hard year for him, and I'm setting myself up to be like in a similar position. And I was just sitting there like, why? Well, why? And why not take hold of, regardless of what I think or what other people have thought about me previously, like, why not do what I know I can do?
Yeah.
So
it terrifies me when I hear and this, again, it's totally fine. Everybody can do what they want.
Right.
But like, for me, it terrifies me when I hear people say like, oh yeah, I'm going to college, and then once I get this good job, like, maybe I can retire at 60.
Yeah.
And like that,
oh my
again,
gosh, I know.
If that's what you want, that's okay.
Yeah.
But I hear that and I'm like, oh my goodness.
I know.
What? Like, you're
Yeah.
putting things off until like you will let yourself, and I know they're still going to have fun until then, but like you're putting this projection of like, oh, then I can retire at 60 and I'm good. And it's like, dude, I want to feel like I'm always retired at all moments of time. Like, that I can just, everything we've been talking about, I want to feel like I can do anything at any moment. If I want to be lazy for a day and sleep until noon, I can do that. If I want to wake up and go to the gym at 6 a.m. and then have the rest of my day to do anything, I can do that. Like, and again, I understand everybody's values are aligned differently. I'm not saying that everybody has to do the things that I want to do, but I hear that and it terrifies me. That idea.
That's for me so scary. And like, my husband definitely comes from more of that background, and I hear him talk sometime or whatever, and like his parents are very much like, well, and then you could retire early. And I was like, I mean, okay, our plan is not really like, I can't define my whole life by this like end point deadline, because then also what does that mean? Like, then I'm done working ever in any like capacity. Like, I don't cease being a human being who wants to go and do things. So I think the idea of like, I always want to be retired, but then I also never want to retire.
Right. Because
I want to have things that enrich my life and fulfill me. And that's what I want to be doing all the time.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, that's so, totally reject that. I hate that too. It's like hard for me because I'm like, if that makes you feel safe and that safety is important to you and that is what is going to bring you joy, then go for it.
Awesome.
Yeah. But for me, it's just, I don't want to have to retire, but I also don't want to have to be tied to, this full-time job. It's making me think of, I was at dinner with some friends the other night, and I was like, yeah, corporate jobs are terrible for me. I worked for IBM for a period of time in audit, and so super fun. And I was like, corporate jobs are difficult for me because like I just wanted to like get up and like leave my desk and like go get groceries, and they all like exploded laughing. And I was like, I think that's so funny because that is such a funny concept when you've been working in an office, 9 to 5 every day. And for me, it's like when I was doing it at 10 o'clock, I'd go to Whole Foods because there's no one at Whole Foods at 10 o'clock on Tuesday, So I was going to pick up ingredients or whatever then. And that kind of freedom is, for me, completely priceless. I trade a lot of things to have that kind of autonomy.
That autonomy and that freedom is that for so long has been my answer to a lot of people when they're like, what do you want? Like, what are you working towards, right? And the easy answer is like, oh, to be a millionaire and to have a bunch of successful things. Like, of course. that the real answer is that freedom.
Yeah.
Like that, as long as I have that, I feel okay. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be really hard days.
Right.
That doesn't mean that things are perfect at all. Like freedom also means the freedom for things to be really, really crappy in your day, right? But that's always my answer, is that like everything I just said. Like if I want to wake up, if I want to sleep in, I can sleep in. If I want to wake up early, I can. If I want to stay up as late as I want, I can do that, knowing what I've got to do the next day. And if I make that decision consciously of like, I might be a little bit tired tomorrow, but like it'll be worth it then awesome.
Yeah.
You know, like that ability to choose anything at any point in time.
Yeah.
Is something that like I don't think I had transparently identified for a long time until I was probably mature enough to be able to identify it. But I think that was something I was chasing for a very long time. Because like even early on, I could identify like I never really worked like a corporate.
Yeah, I was just wondering that
sort of thing.
I was gonna ask.
I worked retail.
Okay.
And I worked like a random customer service-y job. My very first job was in a factory.
Okay.
So I got like that experience where I was like, oh, I'm locked inside all day. Don't like this.
Yeah.
But any of those positions I ever found myself in, it wasn't necessarily that I was just like a young dude who hated working and wanted to sleep all day. It was that like, I feel like I am confined to this thing. And like, so I identified early on, like, okay, it's not that I'm not willing to work for things. It's just that I don't want to do this. Like I knew I was not made for the quote unquote like corporate world. I knew that like stocking shelves and answering some customer questions was not my thing at all. I knew it was like, I need to be able to do whatever it is that I want to do.
Right. Well, and I think it also makes it easier to do those things, right? Like it's, when you kind of break away from those structures and allow yourself to have that space.
Well, I also think that so much of what we're like talking about, and you said something a little bit ago that like kind of prompted this thought, is like, I feel like we're also talking about the idea that like success is self-defined. Yeah. Like that quote, right? That like it can look different for anyone, because even like the story you told earlier of the husband's family member that came to you and said, oh my gosh, you're so brave for doing this thing. And you would look at them and as what? Like CFO of companies, like how are you telling me? But it's like, that's because success can look different for all of us. Right. And that is totally okay. So again, I can be on my high horse all day and be like, everyone should chase their dreams and don't have a real corporate job every day. Somebody else could be like, no, dude, that whole like retire at 60 safety net sort of thing, that sounds like that's what I need. I think my battle is always just in like, make sure that that's not your only definition of success. Right. No, I mean, that's, I've run into that like, so my sister-in-law is like one of my best friends, and she's definitely one of those people that will probably work till like 65 and then retire. But I do think, and I do hope, and she'll listen to this and probably like laugh or hate me. But we've kind of pushed her and her she's boyfriend for a very long time. We've kind of pushed them to like do things now, not like 10 years from now when you've saved up enough for all, you have your kids' college plan and all these other things saved up and blah, blah, blah. Like, no, let's do it now. Like, let's run and do the thing. Like, last winter we went and my husband and his sister golfs and her boyfriend golfs. So that we all went out to Pebble Beach. That's kind of like not a thing that if you're going along a traditional life path, you would plan to do. But we were like, we have this time, why don't we just go do it? So we went and did it, and it was the most fun ever, and it'll be, it's one of those things I'll have forever, and I'm glad they got to do it now as opposed to waiting, for some indefinite amount of time, because you just have my thing is I do have that urge of that I don't know at all what's coming next, and maybe it is because I've moved around so much and done different things, but I don't know what's coming next. So whatever is going on now, I want to be best and fullest and most fulfilling thing that I can be, and whatever it is that I need in this moment. And I think it's kind of funny because right now I'm not
working, right? Or I'm not doing anything. But like I've kind of tried to take this time and said, no, stop, actually stop and make this rest actual rest. Like make this in this moment the best that it can be, so it actually serves you moving forward, because we just get to live in these little moments of time and we just have no clue what the next moment's going to be. So I like to make the right now as full as I can make it. And I don't know, I've had some fun. I've had a really great time. So I'm like, I think that's why I'm always trying to encourage people. I'm like, you can have a really good time. It's okay. I know it's a little scary, but it's fun. Most of the time it's fun. And you get just as stressed out as I do. In fact, you probably get more stressed out than I do over a longer period of time. So like, no, is it completely stress-free? Of course not. And there are days where it's really hard. And it's definitely more personal than working a corporate job, a lot of the feelings around what's going on, because I'm the one driving the ship. So when things go wrong, it definitely affects me on a personal level more than when I worked for, IBM. But I just don't know. I just feel like I get to live this awesome life every day, and it's really cool. And I was glad that I kind of opened my eyes and saw that it was just sitting there, and I just needed to go to it.
Yeah. It's actually kind of even how we right when I started recording, we were joking about
Yeah.
like, hey, this podcast was your day. This was like the plan for today. And it's like, just kind of letting that be the like, hey, I had the freedom to choose to do whatever it is, that I wanted to do. And I'm doing this podcast and we'll see what happens next. Like, I also think you've unlocked a really good thing that has been difficult for me, again, until I think I've made a lot of growth in the last couple of years that I keep referring to, is like, you've allowed yourself to be present, which is very difficult to do, especially in the world of creativity or working for yourself or whatever. You're always thinking about what's next.
Yeah.
And that can be fun, but it can also be a detriment at the exact same time.
Right.
Where it is like, I'm planning for this and I've got a plan and this is awesome. Or you giving yourself the ability of like, I know I can plan on the fly, so I can go with the flow.
Yeah.
But you're still always thinking about it. So like that, everything that you just explained of being present and allowing yourself to be like, I'm just going to do this now, or I'm just going to do this today with no real expectation. And I'm either going to enjoy it or I'm not. And it's another life experience.
Yeah.
Like that, like, cause even kind of going off of that, like something else that I have tried to ingrain in my brain is, we've talked so much in this conversation about like being able to kind of uncover like what, we use the word niche, but I think it's also like purpose or intention with why you're doing something, right? And like, I've tried to give myself, going back to the freedom thing, is like, I have built up enough awareness or confidence in what it is I like to do, or the things that I like to do and how, that I know if anything changes at some point in time, I know I'm going to be able to go with that pivot.
Yeah.
I know that I'm going to be able to like ride that wave, so to speak. You know what I mean? Because it's like, I have like the understanding and confidence enough of who I am and what I'm trying to do, that if tomorrow somehow any of the video work that I do just all goes away and then somebody's like, you can't work in video anymore. I feel like I have enough of that freedom of choice or that confidence in why I do the things that I do to be like, oh, okay, I just won't do video anymore. Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah.
And so, it's like I kind of explained it earlier of like going through those changes and those different kind of, I don't know, just gaining a different understanding of like, wait, I actually like this about this thing, and it's not so much this, right? So now I carry that with me into the next thing. That's all what it is like, for me at least, it was that unlocking point of like, in a way we can almost build, even though they're not the safest, we can kind of build our own safety nets almost of like, well, I know if this doesn't work, I can still kind of fall back into this, and I'll be able to find myself in whatever new position that I need to find myself in. I'll be able to pick myself up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I think that takes, I mean, I would think you'd describe yourself as a pretty self-aware person.
Yeah.
I think it takes a good amount of self-awareness.
Right.
And I do think that is also one of the, I think a bigger factor, and if you're going to be able to do this long term, is how aware of yourself you are, how well you know yourself, and how well you know what you're good at and where you're going to thrive. Because if you can nail those things down, yeah, there's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of things that are open to you, and there's a lot of ways you can pivot. And yeah, if you know what it is, you know exactly where to go. This thing is done. Okay, I go here. This thing is done. Okay, I go here. Like, so, I think part of the whole thing that happened with kind of taking this break was I was losing that sense of self, and I was losing being in touch with myself. And why I decided to just actually take a break is because I needed that back. I needed to be, I know who I am, and I know what I'm good at, and I know, where I want to explore next. I needed that sense back because that's what I'd always had. And it's easy to get drowned out, especially when you have a lot of people's opinions flying at you constantly, because when you're putting out a product and people are judging it, and I never took when people didn't like things to heart that much. But it is a lot of focus on you as a person. And so, yeah, losing that little touch of self-awareness, because when you have that self-awareness, it's just, you're unstoppable because you know your actual limits, not your perceived limits, not what society thinks should be your limits, but like what you can actually do. And that's such an empowered place to be and to operate from.
Yeah. So I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here
Yeah.
and asking you to say this publicly on a recorded podcast that'll be around. And, I'm not expecting some super direct, like, oh, yes, this is the plan. But, like, being in this moment right now.
Yeah.
And being in this sort of, this break, this kind of, like, step back and let's, like, look at the whole picture. Like, if you are looking forward at all,
Yeah.
like, what are some things you want to pick back up? Or what are the hopes going forward of, like, when I do get back in the flow of things, it's, to keep, blogging and all that sort of stuff, but it's maybe to form something like this or, form something new in this way. Like, and again, I know we just spent a whole conversation talking about just like allowing yourself to go with the flow. And I know your answer right now could be different in 6 months, right? But like being able to kind of sit in this moment and maybe take that broad look at everything, like, what is it, maybe this is the way to ask it, like, what is it that you're feeling right now about everything?
Yeah, I mean, I do. Day to day is different. Some days I'm like, oh, well, I could just do this forever. This is great. I am privileged to be in this position where it's fine that I am just sitting on my couch today, and I should just enjoy that. And I have those days, and then I have, days where I'm like, well, I should go back to school then, and I can like focus on more of a passion in academia somewhere than just whatever they thought was a good job for me to have. And so I go back and explore that. But I mean, likely as I look forward, I know there's another business. I know there is. I'm toying around with a couple of ideas, but maybe getting back into the catering space, but not on the food side, kind of more events, and things like that is definitely a way I've kind of looked at going recently. And there's also always other ideas stewing around in there. But I really think after being away from it, I think that owning and like running my own business, I just have a passion for people. And when I got to hire people, that was the coolest thing for me. I really enjoyed that because it kind of feels like giving back in a way while you're being given to, and it's I loved that, and so I would love to be in that position again at some point. So I know that there's something in the future. I'm just trying to allow myself to make sure that I'm easing into it and I'm doing it at my own pace, and I'm not letting anyone push deadlines or anything. I want it to be organic because I want it to be a little bit of a longer haul. there were a lot of external circumstances that brought the first journey to an end, and there could be a lot that bring the next one to an end, you know. But I kind of am looking into like a place where I could just kind of settle into a groove for a bit of time, because I think I'm at that point where that would feel good for a bit.
Yeah. Do you feel like in your journey up to this point, and maybe it comes directly from, you know, the right now, this break that you're in the midst of, like, do you feel like there's like a big lesson you've been able to take away from a lot of this? Like, is there something that you've kind of walked away with of like, okay, like, yeah, that point really drove home for me, and now I'm kind of carrying this with me, like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that you can just be, that's okay, that you don't have to be defined by a million different things, that you can just be whoever you are, and that's okay, and to really sit with it just being okay. Don't put any qualifications on it and no justifications of why or how, but I can just exist, and that is okay. It's been huge and unexpected. You know, I just thought I'd have some good sleep or something for a little bit. I didn't expect it to be as deep of a journey as it has been. And I also didn't realize that I never allowed myself to do that before, to just kind of exist as a person in the world. Mm-hmm. So I think that's probably been my biggest takeaway.
This episode has like flown by. Like this, like I'm
a talker.
No, that's not even a bad thing. I'm literally like, in my head, we had talked for like 30 minutes maybe, and it's like, we're like an hour 30. Like, that's honestly, I love that.
Oh, I love that too.
Is there, even though we have talked about so much, like, are there any like major points? Like, have we missed out on anything big that you're like, honestly, like, this would be good to talk about? Like, this whole portion of my life we skipped over. Like, I always like to kind of double check.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I mean, I feel like we covered the big things, and yeah, and I hope that maybe that it all resonates with somebody, and somebody gets something from it, and even if it's just us.
Yeah, that's literally what I was about to say. Like, even if it's just like, I can tell you, like, just from, you know, we've met the very first time today. Yeah. We just had a blast of a conversation that absolutely flew by. And literally, like, I feel like so much of what you said, it's like, even though a lot of it was like stuff that I agreed with and stuff that I'm like, oh yes, I felt that same way, so much of what you shared was just so reassuring to hear. Aww. You know what I mean? Like, it's so like, yeah, like, you're not crazy for feeling that way. It's okay. Like, let yourself quit, let yourself pivot, quote unquote, or just let yourself like go with the flow of things and try all the things that you want to try. Because like, even though I do that, I often will beat myself up for doing so, because I'm like, is this really the right decision that I need to be making? But even in this whatever amount of time this has been, I also feel like we are very similar in so many ways. Like, a lot of these ways where I'm like, whoa, like, yeah, you said the same thing that I would think when I say that or whatever. And truly, like, again, even if it just resonates with me or just us or whatever, this was a blast of a conversation.
Yeah, I had a great time.
There's no way that someone's not listening to this and like, wow, she had so many amazing things to say. Like, dude, you had so much amazing stuff. I appreciate you sharing everything that you did. So in lieu of not having any big secret parts of the story that we didn't hit, I wrap up every episode of this the exact same way, with the exact same question. So I'm going to ask for one more piece of advice. Okay. But this time, I want you to pretend that it's not just me listening, or it's not just maybe a couple listeners listening. I want you to pretend like everyone, everywhere in the world can hear you right now. So we're tossing logic out the window. They can understand you. They can hear you, right? Okay. You have a live mic that is attached to everyone in the world, and you get to share something with them. What is it that you would want everyone to hear?
I would want everyone to know that you deserve to be happy, and you deserve a full life, and you deserve a life that excites you, and whatever that looks like for you, but that is absolutely 100% something you deserve. No caveats about it. I think that would be my piece of advice.
I love it. Jessica, this was a blast.
Oh,
Seriously.
thank you.
Thank you
I
so
had a
much
great
for
time, yeah.
I hope that you enjoyed it too. And I was like, oh God, thank you. Please cut this. Let me get out of here. So before we do get out of here, where can I know we're in a break right now, right?
Yeah.
So there might be not as many recipes flying out the doors or anything like that, but if anybody does want to go check out anything that you do or have done or keep up to see what's coming, where can they find you around the internet if you want them to do so?
Yeah, so on social media, I'm pretty much Jessica_Cabbage, pretty much everywhere. So yeah, Jessica Cabbage on Instagram, and then there'll be stuff soon. So, but yeah, and then that's probably the best place to find me, honestly. And I love DMs, and I love when people talk to me. So I'd say don't be afraid and talk. About whatever.
Yes, no, that's perfect. And honestly, I just love that maybe more than anything, the biggest thing that I learned this episode is that I wasn't wrong for marking you down as literal Jessica Cabbage. Like,
no, you were not.
Your last name means that for real.
Yes.
I'm not an idiot. It's always a good thing to learn in these podcast episodes. Jessica, thank you so much.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
If this podcast does just one thing for me, and it really does do a lot, but if there's one main thing, it would be just truly showing me that I am not alone in many of the wild ways that I think and how I navigate the creative world in general. There are honestly so many things that I connected and related to with Jessica in this episode, and I hope you found some of that too. Whether it's just letting yourself enjoy things and enjoy, chasing after your goals, no matter how many that you may have, or just simply the power in letting yourself quit something and letting yourself take a break and maybe just trying again later, or just determine that it wasn't actually for you and you just weren't as interested as you thought. I just think there's a lot of good stuff that she had to say in this. So I'm very stoked that we got to make it happen. So one more big thank you to Jessica for being on the show. But if you did enjoy what you heard, tell somebody about it. Share it on social. Let people know how cool you thought it was. Tag me, tag Jessica, tag the show. Anything to feed that algorithm and let it know that this show is of any amount of importance. But if you really want to help out and support, there's a few ways you can really do that. First, you can simply support by following us on social at WYDH Pod. I also ask you to please hit the follow or subscribe buttons wherever you're listening. It would also be very cool if while you're there, you tossed up a rating or review for the show as well. Toss some stars on there. Leave a written review if you really liked what you heard. And of course, if you want to keep up with all these episodes in video form, both these full-length stories and the shorter topic-based 15-minute Fridays, you can do so by subscribing to my personal YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Ross Tyson. Tyson is spelled Theisen. That is where you can find all of these episodes in video form. So do all the things, feed the algorithm, tell somebody about it, whatever you do, just, help spread the word in some way of this show, get these stories heard by more ears in whatever form. It really, really does help out a whole lot more than you may know. But before we say goodbye, one last reminder to check out this week's sponsors, Makers Social, the DIY craft bar located in the Franklinton Arts District. You can visit makerscolumbus.com and enter WYDH in the notes of your checkout for $10 off your reservation. And of course, also to PromoWest Productions and all the shows they've got coming through town. For more info on all of those, visit PromoWestLive.com. Or if you know a show you want to go to, grab your tickets at AXS.com. So there it is. Support if you can, support if you want. But well, even if you don't, thank you so very much for listening. If you're on YouTube, thanks for looking. And I hope you stick around for more because, as always, I'll be back next episode with a brand new guest that you may or may not know of, with a brand new story that you for sure never heard. Good night and goodbye.